I'm going to share with you how to paint a mountain in oil using the wet on wet technique, coming up right now. Wild for Games coming at you from my creative control playlist, where I try to bring you the best tips, tricks, and even tutorials just like this one here to help unlock your creative potential. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing. A lot of people have trouble painting mountains. In fact, they say it's actually the hardest part of doing landscapes. But with a simple few tips and tricks and even a little guidance from me, I'm going to show you how to slay them constantly. So let's move on over to our canvas and I'm going to show you how to do them perfect every time. Let's go. To speed up the process, I went ahead and already put magic white on my canvas. If you're not sure the proper way to put magic white on your canvas, I will go ahead and put a link in the top right corner for you. Feel free to click on that at any time. It'll walk you through the entire steps. Before we can go ahead and put our mountain in, I need to drop in a background. That way our mountain will actually have something to stand out against. I'm going to use two main colors for this. I'm going to use permanent red rose, which is going to create a nice pink color with that magic white in the background, and Phthalo Blue, which is going to get us a beautiful aqua color in the sky. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in really quick and speed up the video. If you guys want to take a look on how I do anything like this, feel free to watch me on Twitch. I love to do skies all the time. For the first mountain that we're going to do a background mountain. When doing a background mountain, that mountain has to be lighter than all the other mountains that are going to come in front of it. So to achieve that look, we're going to use equal portions of Phthalo Blue, black, and white. When we combine all those colors together, we're going to get a nice gray color that has a hint of blue in it. When we're doing a background mountain and dropping it in, make sure you don't add too many bumps. Since this mountain is way in the distance, you're not going to see a lot of definition or detail in it. So only give it 1 or 2 or 3 valleys. Keep it somewhere within there, but you don't want to make them too high or too low on the peaks and valleys. I moved the camera in to give you guys a little bit better of an angle to show you how I pull down color. One of the best tricks I was ever shown is to put your 1-inch brush down and wiggle it up towards the edge and slowly glide down. When gliding down, you have to know where the horizon line should be. You don't want to drag all of that paint down. Reason being is you want to create a natural gradient and allow some of your sky to poke through. This is going to create natural diffusion, and it's going to create separation between light and dark when you drop something else in front of it. So make sure you accomplish that by not killing all of that lower gradient by pulling that mountain farther down than it needs to be. Step number 2 is make sure you work out all of the excess paint. The more paint you can work out, the more your highlights and your shadows will stick to the mountain when creating snow. I can't stress this enough. Try to pull out as much as you can, and don't be afraid to wipe the excess on a paper towel. If you're a beginner at doing mountain highlights or you can't visualize where the snow is, I recommend using the spaded end of your palette knife and carve in the edges of where you see the snow versus the shadow side. This is a quick little tip that'll help pay dividends hugely. Let's talk about palette knives for one quick second. The one that you're probably all used to is probably this one right here. This is the Bob Ross knife that comes within the kit, or that you guys are probably most used to using because you bought it on Amazon. And it's a great knife, but it's an advanced knife. The reason it's advanced is the tip actually comes to a very bladed end. It's very sharp, which is really good, but if you're not used to it, it's very hard to understand how to put on paint by letting it come off naturally from the blade. You tend to be cutting it more than you let the canvas actually grab it at once and allow the paint to break from a very light touch. What I recommend is go ahead and pick up this Artist Loft knife. You can go up and pick the small one because you're gonna need it anyways for the small details within the cracks of a mount anyways. The reason I recommend this is it's less sharp. It's actually rounded at the end rather than coming to a point. And what this allows is it allows for beginning artists paint to roll off the edge of the knife and allows it to create those natural flows and breaks within the mountain. It does require a little more paint than the Bob Ross knife, but I consider this a beginner's knife and this an advanced knife. So you can start here and then work up to this. Now that we've gone over the differences between the two knives, allow me to show you how to use them properly. If you haven't had a chance to check out my previous YouTube video on how to make paint break, I'll put it in the top right corner because it goes a little more on depth to create the natural look. When using your beginner knife, which is that artist loft knife, you want to get a nice cut roll on the edge of the blade. This roll allows you to smoothly glide your knife across the canvas. And if you remember correctly, our canvas isn't as wet since we worked out all that access color. Since our canvas is a little more dry, the paint is willing to grab the canvas and create all these natural, beautiful breaks. If you don't like too many breaks or your paint's not grabbing enough, feel free to create a bigger roll on the edge of your knife. I personally love thick highlights working from the top of the peak all the way down. Just make sure when you do your gliding strokes that at the very end of it, you pull down your blade and allow it to go at a natural angle that's kind of flat and parallel to the canvas to create kind of a misty look. And this will help us when we're tapping in our mountain near the end. Since we carved in our lines, all we have to do is put our highlights on our right side or left, depending on where your highlight is coming from. Allow your light source to define that. And then all we got to do is put in our shadow side on the opposite side. To create that, I'm just going to mix in a little bit of blue with a little touch of that gray color we made for the mountain, just to dull it down. And it's the same technique. Just swipe it in and allow the canvas to grab what it wants. Since this is a background mountain, we do not need to have a lot of detail. Remember, we don't need to create a lot of definition. Again, this is just a background mountain that we're going to tap out here in just a moment. When you finally put all of your highlights and your shadows on your mountain, one of the biggest tips I can give you is actually step back and look at it. See where you need to make improvements. Maybe some of your blue bled into your white, maybe some of your white bled into your blue. What I like to do is I like to go back with a nice thick roll of white and fix up some of my carving lines or places where it just doesn't look natural. Maybe there wasn't enough jagged edge, maybe it's too symmetrical. There's plenty of reasons. I also personally like to add a little bit of white to my shadow side. It kind of looks like the snow is melting or kissing some spots over there that maybe the sunlight has just reflected on a little bit. Now that we've got our mountain the way that we like it, we need to make that mountain be in the background. And to do that, we're gonna push it back by tapping out the base of our mountain with a 2-inch brush. We're gonna use the upper half of our bristles and follow the angle of your mountain. You can go up as far as you want. I like to go up about anywhere from 1/4 to about 1/3. Follow the angle of your mountains and tap it down thoroughly. This is gonna create two things. It's gonna create a nice bit of diffusion and also soften that base, making it prime to put some other element in front of it, creating depth and distance within your painting. When you have everything tapped in, all you need to do is just fluff up the mountain just like you would a cloud. This is a very soft stroke. Allow all the bristles to work. You can do stroke after stroke to get a nice soft base to your bottom. Once it's all fluffed in, just cross stroke any of the paint that got to the bottom end. Yes, sometimes some of your white or blue or the gray of the mountain will catch onto the brush and go at the bottom, but we don't care what happens at the bottom. We can cross stroke that out and that will fall into the background. And then congratulations, you've got a perfect mountain that was easily made in just a couple of minutes. Let's go ahead and move on to a mountain that's gonna lay in front of this, and I'm gonna show you how to do some layering of mountains. When dropping in our second mountain, we have to consider two important factors. The first one being the actual color of the mountain. Since it's in front of the other mountain, we wanna make our base color slightly darker. To achieve this, all I did was add a little more blue and a little more black to the mountain mixture color that we used in the previous mountain in the background. Factor number 2 that we have to concern ourselves with is placement of this mountain. We want to make sure that we create enough separation between the two mountains, but we want to make sure we don't hide the mountain or show too much of the diffusion where it makes it look like the mountain is just floating in the sky. So make sure before you attack the canvas where your mountain is going to lay. I recommend standing back and looking at it, or slightly carving it in with your knife just to get a kind of basic outline, or you can even use a fan brush to kind of lay out your land. I moved the camera in because I wanted to show beginning painters that you can literally scrape the paint off when creating a mountain. You're not going to hurt the canvas, it's a fabric material. So go ahead and use that knife and literally scrape really hard all that excess paint off, because this is going to make sticking highlights on there a lot easier. So I want to show you a different angle. I'm putting the camera on my left side, so this way it gives you more of an open side to see how the bristles are attacking the mountain. Now, just to let you know, this probably won't be my best mountain, because to achieve this angle, I am currently straddling the camera. I can't see much of my own mountain, but hopefully this shows you guys how the bristles are working on the actual mountain. I follow the same steps as I do with the other mountain. All I'm allowing my 1-inch brush to do is grab all that excess paint, and I can pull it down to shape my mountain. Make sure you wiggle your brush and follow the angles of how you want to shape your mountain. If you have any excess paint, don't be afraid to tap it out in a paper towel. Just like before, I recommend using the spaded side of your palette knife to carve in the highlight and shadow side. Especially when you get into bigger mountains, this will help figure out what kind of lay of the land you want to form. And plus, it's not like you have to follow the lines. They're just guidelines. Feel free to mix it up as you paint and create your own highlights. Once you have your guidelines in place, go ahead and cut off a nice roll of titanium white and start working on all of your highlights. I like to work with generally the smallest portion and then work my way to the center mass of my mountain, but it's completely up to you. Since I'm at this awesome straddle angle, it gives me a great opportunity to show you how the palette knife should approach the canvas to allow the paint to break off from it. Bring your knife perpendicular to the angle of your mountain. You want to jiggle your knife so this way there's a nice base that allows your paint to have a beginning point of a sticky spot. Then slowly glide down your hand towards the angle of the mountain that you're trying to achieve, and slowly start pushing the palette knife down and allow it to become more parallel with the mountain as you get towards the base. Mountain highlights and shadows unfortunately take a little bit of time to master. What I recommend is, if you have your beginning knife, start with a bigger roll of paint. This allows the canvas to grab a little more paint. Yes, your highlights are going to be a little bit thicker, but you're going to have a greater understanding of how the canvas is going to grab the paint and create those breaks. Just follow your guidelines for both the highlight side and the shadow side, and you'll start to see how things click when you give it a nice breeze across with your palette knife, how the canvas is going to grab all of that paint. Another cool quick tip to help you shape your mountains, if you want to add some dark valleys in there, just add in a few blade cuts of straight black, or you could do a mixture of black and blue if you want more of a dulled out color. But this is a great way to add a little more detail to your mountain. Wow, we've covered a lot of awesome steps that are going to make your mountains look phenomenal. Just repeat a lot of the processes. Once you're happy with your mountain, we have to tap in the base. So this way we're going to push this mountain back and give it a nice diffusion at the bottom. And once again, we're going to fluff up the base of the mountain. If we get any excess paint at the bottom of it, we don't really care because we're going to put something in front of it, or you can actually cross blend that out with some few cross strokes. Well, would you look at that? You guys are all pros at mountains now. Congratulations. I'm going to go ahead and throw in one final almighty mountain and use all the steps that we have learned here in this tutorial and apply them here. The biggest difference between my foreground mountain and the rest of my mountains that I have here is I have darkened my mountain mixture color. As we move forward within our foreground, generally things get more defined and have a darker contrast to them. This is going to create the illusion of depth. So all I did was add a little bit of black and a little bit of blue to my mountain mixture color. If I have too much color on my paintbrush, I make sure to tap it out on a paper towel. We want to make sure that our mountains are going to be nice and dry and doesn't have a lot of excess paint. If we have too much excess paint, our highlights and our shadows won't stick. When we're all good and settled on that, we want to lay out our land, and to do that, we showed you the palette knife carving trick. So go ahead and use the spade edge of your palette knife and carve in the lay of your land. Remember, these are just guidelines, and if you do put them down, you can deviate at any time. That is the fun part about oil. With your palette knife in hand, start laying in all your awesome highlights and shadows. We want to make sure, since these are foreground mountains, that we really make this pop and have a lot of detail. So make sure you add more paint breaks, some dark spots, some extreme highlights, some valleys, some peaks. We want to make this a very eye-catching part since it is at the foreground and at the forefront of our painting. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully that'll help you conquer your mountains. If you guys just practice literally just a few paintings that consist of mostly mountains, you will understand them real easily. So I hope seeing both these angles and how I like to put on thicker highlights and how to attack angles really helps you out. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a nice thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also hit that subscribe button and let me know what are some of your tricks that you guys like to do to conquer mountains. Once again, my name is Wild for Games. Feel free to follow me on all my social media. You can follow me at Wild for Games on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. If you guys also want to support me, you can visit my Flare Dash store. I will put a link below. I will see you guys in the next video next time. Take care. Peace.